E-commerce simplified by Scale Up.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Scale Up podcast. We at Scale Up over here are a newsletter with fast-growing e-commerce solutions with more than 15,000 high-level marketers from DTC brands engaging to simplify e-commerce. And today we have with us here Kevin Smith, the founder and CEO of SmashBrand, a creative performance-driven packaging design company that has worked with brands like Duracell, G Fuel, and Red Gold, among many, to ensure packaging that's proven to perform. He's also a CPG entrepreneur with multiple exits and an occasional investor. So with a hearty thanks for taking your time out for this session, and let's get right into it, shall we?
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
So we'll get started with the first question of the day, getting right into it. What do you mean when you say packaging? I'm sure it's beyond just the physical packaging of the products. So what exactly are the components and things to keep in mind when planning packaging in the DTC space?
That's a great question. So, and one thing that I wanted to talk about a little bit, and we work with a lot of DTC brands, and I'll use kind of through our conversation today, maybe two examples to two different places, and one of them would be, I would say, the largest DTC pet food brand in the nation, and the other one we'll use is going to be a small DTC brand that makes a hydration product that's maybe hitting kind of the $4 to $6 million range in sales, But for us, our focus, and I've owned DTC brands, but our focus is really on retail. So when we do work with DTC brands, or I'm talking with them, it's more in the context of how they're going to move omni-channel and go from just direct to consumer to also including more of a retail position. So actually, my definition of packaging, to answer that question, is really just the pure packaging, the thing that surrounds the product, that eventually, while it's a little less important at the moment when you're selling DTC, it's going to be more experiential, and the sale has already happened, and it's now going to be like an interactive brand point more in the DTC space. But as they move to retail and activating there, it's going to be the most important marketing asset that the brand has. And so we think there's a lot of times a careful balance of, as brands are considering maybe future of retail, if they don't want to have a complete reinvestment, we want to start thinking about that now and how that looks for the overall consumer experience. So when they make the transition into retail, the product's just ready to sell.
That's a very nice answer. Makes sense. Moving on to the next question. Usually 75% of DTC sales are completely online. So how much do you think is the impact of packaging itself in selling the online experience?
Right. That's a great question. I personally believe, and having own brands in that space, that for DTC companies, it is one of the things that I'm investing in last. Right. It's we need to have great marketing teams. We need to have a great product that drives repeat sale. That's so important. And packaging is a great piece at the DTC level. But again, more for these brands, it's going to be about, protecting the product. It's going to be about when it comes and it arrives at your doorstep, that it doesn't come in some flimsy plastic bag where you feel like, oh, I spent $100 on this thing and it feels like it's from China, right? We want it to be in line with how we want the brand to be perceived. We want the experience to be nice. So I think while it's important for repeat sales and perception of who the company is, for that initial purchase, packaging for me doesn't play a large role for DTC, but it does play a large role for the overall brand experience, which is going to lead to more repeat sale.
True. Okay. So do you think the packaging of the product overpowers the experience of the product itself? Say, for example, you're selling an energy drink, which probably isn't that good or isn't that great, but the packaging of it kind of just sells it. So what do you think about that?
Yeah. So for this question, I'm going to talk about it more in a retail perspective, because in the retail, like if there was an online DTC brand of energy drink that moves into retail, packaging is going to be everything. And a lot of times, what we find, so there's going to be four primary things that matter. You're going to have, in retail, it's going to be product, and that's like the energy drink and what it's made of and how it tastes and all of that, and the packaging. And then you're going to have pricing, how it's priced. And then you're going to have placement, like where it shows up. If it's at the very top of the shelf or the very bottom, it's going to be more difficult to find and buy than somewhere in the middle. And then you have promotion, right? And all of those things together combine success in retail. Without a doubt, packaging plays this role where we could make a brand or a product that, and we know like in energy drinks, for example, there's something called category purchase drivers. And those have to be like, you have to check those off for the product to actually sell. And in energy drink, it's going to be, does it taste good and is it refreshing? And if you can get those two things, after that, there's going to be these brand drivers that sell the product. You could design packaging that makes this thing look like the most delicious looking thing on the world, that it's so refreshing and it has a compelling value proposition. And then when they take it home, it tastes horrible. And so it does. It'll overpower the product. And then there's this consumer mismatch when they get home, they drink it, and now they don't get repeat purchase. And so the product has a problem. But I see it all the time with packaging is where it can overpower. It can drive the purchase. But if the packaging is better than the product, then we've got a problem.
Also, out of the other three P's that you mentioned, which one do you think is the second most important thing?
Pricing, absolutely. So, if you have an energy drink that's out there and you priced it at $9, and it's got all these amazing premium ingredients that are very expensive, you're probably not going to sell very much. So, understanding where you price. There's things called price tolerances where, you may be a more premium product, but you still want to find out where that price tolerance is. The right packaging and the right price is going to be what drives sale every time.
Okay. I was actually under the assumption that promotion would be the second most important because, if the audience doesn't know your product itself, the pricing doesn't matter. They need to know you first. So,
yeah, I think that the majority of small brands, and when I say small, I mean under $40 million in sales. Those are going to be smaller brands. The majority of and especially in like fast moving consumer goods like energy drinks, the majority of people, when a brand is activating in retail, it's a very good chance that walking into that, what I call a category entry point, that's maybe that refrigerated section where all the energy drinks are, that's going to be the first time that you ever come in contact with that brand. And it's going to do all of the driving of the sale at that point. You may have not seen it through other like marketing effort or promotion. And actually, when I'm talking about retail promotion, it's a little bit different, but that would be where you're going into like the grocery store and you see that there's a big sign that says buy 3 of them for $4. And so they've taken the price down with a price promotion. And that's actually what it'll drive the sale for what they call trial, to get you to buy it that one first time. And then the promotion goes away, and hopefully now your product is good enough that you come back and now it's a repeat purchase.
Got it. Makes sense. Okay, moving on. What's the process a CPG brand should take to make sure they're headed towards good and productive packaging?
This is my favorite. This is one of my favorite questions right here. So again, I'm going to take it from the context of, let's pretend that there's this DTC brand out there. They're doing maybe a few million in sales or many million in sales. And they realize now that as targeting is becoming and cost of acquisition is becoming harder and harder, they want to meet the consumer where they're at. And that is going to be in the retail environment. So what should they be doing to ensure that when they put this thing out there, it's just going to sell? And it's actually, I believe it's not that complicated. There's a really, like, the biggest data company in the world is Nielsen, if your audience is familiar. And they have some great products and great tools. One of them is called Nielsen Bases. And it's probably about $1 million to use it. And it's a very expensive tool set. But the large brands that use it, when they are done, it's not a mystery. They've been looking at their approach, every step of their approach, and they already know how it's going to sell. And we can take that, and any brand can apply it on a very small budget. But what we have to do is it's going to be different than DTC, and we have to look at first, what are the category dynamics? This is going to be important. So again, if we use the energy drinks as an example, we can buy data, or we can do enough research to find out what are going to be the main drivers of purchase in the category. And it may be, like I mentioned, like tastes great and is refreshing. And there's also going to be these emotional drivers that are going to be important. That's important to a segment of the consumer, and we want to find those out. And then we want to understand the consumer's perceptions around all of the choice. And then with that, there's going to be some kind of there's going to be a shopping problem. And then from that, there's going to be that brand has a unique value proposition, and that's very important. And when you take all of those things together, what you have to do is think about how we can bring all those together. So when somebody comes in contact with the packaging in 3 seconds, they get all of that. And the right way to do it is, and you can do this on a budget or you can spend a lot of money. There's a lot of ways to do it, but you first start off with, hey, what's my retail strategy? And you have these ideas and you want to test them. And you want to test them with thousands of consumers. If you can't test them, you'd want to survey them at a minimum. And you start to find out which of your retail strategies have the best kind of pull. And then from there, you would say, okay, how do we want to articulate with words all of these things that we're trying, the purchase drivers, how are we addressing the shopper problems and our differentiation, and how are we doing it where we can write something in 3 seconds, people get it. And again, you want to test it, or you want to survey it, and you want to get data behind it. And then finally, you want to take all those things that we just did, and you want to move that into actual packaging design, and you want to work on tons of variation. And then again, you want to test it, or you can survey it. And at the end of that, because you've done so much testing and you've got so much data now, that you should just know that when you put this in the market, people want it.
Very good answer. Okay. Okay, now that you've mentioned surveying, what's the most viable way of surveying people on the packaging? Because a lot of the times the focus is on the packaging itself. So how do you take all the feedback and kind of incorporate that? And what's the most viable way?
Yeah, so I'll answer that 2 ways. The first way is surveying isn't the best route. You actually want to use specific testing systems. There's going to be a KPI that's called purchase intent, and purchase intent is going to be the closest possible thing that you can get to of somebody buying your product in a real retail environment. And that number will be it will translate to real market outcomes. It's very hard to do that with just a classic survey, but so you want testing systems that do like full shelf testing and they display for a few seconds, and you find out like which has the most standout and purchase intent. That's the best way you can do it. Like if I'm running it here, we're doing testing systems. But let's say you're a brand on the budget and you want to do surveying. The thing that you want to avoid, and you can use SurveyMonkey or any of these tools that are out there. Ideally, you'd hire a freelancer or something that has some experience in surveying, so you're not biasing or asking bad questions. The things that you want to avoid is, which one of these do you like the best? That's a terrible way to ask the question. But if we think about how we want the brand to be perceived, and again, if we use the energy drink example, it may be that we want this brand to be perceived as something that's for gamers, right? This is a specific energy drink that's for gamers, and we want it to be to seem like it's refreshing and it tastes amazing. So it's refreshing, it tastes amazing, and it's for gamers. What you can do is start surveying this and finding out by just asking them how it makes them feel. They're getting their reaction to it, and start to try to pull on the levers of are we reaching those perceptions that we want. So you would survey the perceptions that people have about the packaging, and from there, that qualitative and quantitative data, you're going to take it away and say, hey, this idea that we're developing over here, like people don't understand necessarily in a couple seconds that it's for gamers, or they don't, it's all very minimalistic, and people aren't thinking that it tastes very good. Then you're going to use those surveys to make changes to hopefully push those perceptions up, and that's going to give you better outcomes when you go to market.
Got it. Okay. A few CPG products, like say for example, very specific sneaker care products, are appealing ideally only to the Gen Z or late millennial audience, but whereas the product could be useful to everyone in general. So how do you design the packaging in a way that's appealing to every age group?
Yeah. So this is a great question too. And there's a couple different ways to approach it. So I mentioned before, one of the most important things as you move into retail is going to be your retail strategy or your retail positioning, which is different than brand positioning and brand strategy. In your example, it may be that that you have a large purchase audience with your DTC brand that's millennial, but you also understand that your problem solves problems for a lot wider audience. And so there's this opportunity to capture more sale, more market share with not being so niche in retail. That may be a viable strategy. If that's the case, the nice thing about it is, so I'm actually not a big believer in personas at all. I think personas are great for marketing, but I prefer psychographics. And so a psychographics for your shoe example, that's where you're looking at what about our product is going to be unique and interesting for a subset of people without defining them. We're not going to look at age, but we're going to say people. We're looking to attract people that have dirty shoes and that would spend effort wanting to clean them so they don't have to go buy new shoes when they look dirty, right? We may find that, yeah, Gen Z loves that and it's selling well in our DTC channels, but also people my age, 40-year-olds, are really interested in that. So in that context, as we design and test packaging, what we would do is we would try to make it not generational. Right, we would design it for a wider audience, and then we would test a wider audience. But we would also, in that testing, segment it by Gen Z, Millennial, Generation X, myself, Boomers, whatever we want. And then we're going to start to see when we segment the data, we're going to see, hey, yeah, actually, by making it super safe like this, we've actually lost purchase with Millennials. Well, maybe we need to pull that lever and push it back up a little bit more. And then the other part to that question is sometimes a category calls for disruption by targeting a specific audience. And I'll give an example of one where I just got the outcome of the shopper data for it, but it's not a very exciting category, but it's canned tomatoes. And so you're going to the grocery store, you're buying canned tomatoes. It's the same large brands everywhere. But this was a specific retail strategy once we got into the research where we said, guys, right now you're trying to target everybody. And those big, $100 million brands are capturing most of the market share. So what we're going to suggest for you is we're going to make designs that are specifically for Millennial, Gen Z. This thing's going to stand out on the shelf. The older generations are probably not going to love it because it doesn't feel like it's for them. But we're going to make a play to be more narrow and niche with a certain generation. And what we've seen since they've activated over the last year is now their sales are up 400%. It's a big deal. And but there's certainly a time to do it both ways, but that's going to come down to the retail strategy you bring forward.
That was actually one of my other questions as well. So from what I've seen, something minimal, something very simple is what attracts the eye of Gen Z. And heavy packaging, which gives more information, is what attracts the Gen X audience. So how do you kind of create a balance between both of them was also one of the questions. But I think you pretty much answered that already in this. Okay. So how do you understand to what extent is the product working or is the product successful, and how much of it is only through packaging? Because there might be 100 different reasons of why the product is working. How do you measure the success rate, which is coming only from packaging?
Yeah, so the end, really any conversation that happens, the most important thing is that, at some point, when a brand is in retail is getting shopper data through IRI or Nielsen IQ that's showing the actual real number of sales through all the store channels, that's the real thing that matters at the end of the day. Like how much revenue in store, how much velocity are they having in sales? But on the packaging side, again, as we think about when a brand is making that move and develop packaging for retail, we can measure everything. And so we're going to see from where they are today, how much purchase intent, right? That's like velocity, how much sales they're going to have. We're going to see where they are today. and then we're going to watch a progression move up. It may be that we want to move a brand up, when they move into retail, there's, three top brands out there, and we want to be able to take 25% of all market share. We're going to be able to see through data and finding the right strategy, the right communication, the right design, and all of that. We're going to be able to see from where they are today to how we're going to capture that 25%. And that will be 100% that will come down to packaging for the initial sale. But as I mentioned before, that repeat buy is now going to come down. So it's usually the packaging is going to get you on trial. It's going to get you that initial sale. It's going to get the person to put it in their basket and take it home. But then the repeat sale, the packaging's only job is to make it easy to find again and memorable. And then the product has to be good so that they want to buy it again. Now, that beef jerky or the energy drink, it has to taste amazing and give them the energy that they want.
Correct.
You have to deliver on the promise, I guess. That's the...
Yeah, kind of all comes down to that. Okay, so how are designs for Amazon different than any other point of sale designs?
Yeah, so important question here, and so today I own a lot of Amazon brands. They do millions in sales. They're not huge. I actually don't even have any employees really for that. It's just we find an opportunity in the Amazon space. We create the right brand for it. We do the right amount of testing to make sure that when we put it on there, and then I have a firm that I use that does the listing and stuff to make sure that we get on page one, and then it just sells after that. Amazon and packaging is quite different. So if you're going to just have a pure Amazon brand and you're not worried about this being in retail right now, it's very different because now the packaging doesn't have to do very much of the work. Your listing is going to do the majority of the work, right? You can have, lots of bullet points and featured copies and imagery. And so what we focus more on the packaging is when you see it for the first time in the listing, again, it has to create a perception. So maybe you're selling like MCT oil, and you know that when they, at a glance, it has to, in a thumbnail version, it has to stand out and be unique within the thumbnails. It has to grab attention. So we look at that, and that's like retail, but it's going to be different at a thumbnail level than it would be in a store. And then when they now click on it and they go to the listing, for example, MCT oil, we may find out that an important purchase driver is that it is that it's transparent or that it seems very healthy. And so the whole packaging would be evolved on creating the right perception. So when they see it in a matter of seconds, they're still interested in getting to the content of the page to then go to the buy box.
Got it. Understood. Okay. Finally, I think we're down to our last question. I'd like to ask you, how can brands know they'll sell before they hit the shelves through packaging? Basically, just sum it all up.
Yeah, this is the kind of thing for our agency now that we have, and being a brand owner who later started an agency. The one thing, and the reason that I did it, let me add a little bit of context to it, is that traditionally you go hire an agency and everything is very subjective, right? They're pitching you all these ideas and you may activate them, and you may find out 6 months later that you got to redo everything because it didn't work. So when we created this, I wanted one thing. I wanted to be able to guarantee, and I believe we are the only agency in the world at a retail level that I can guarantee a brand what they're going to have in sales when they're done with us. And the way that we do that is really not a secret. It's what we talked about today. It's that when you start and you come up with the right retail positioning and you've tested it and you can show, and there's scoring systems for that when we make this, if we can make that, it's just going to sell. And then you move to communication, then you move to design, and you're testing all the approaches the whole way. In the end, it's not a mystery. We'll be able to know the exact market share and sales velocity that we should expect when we go into retail, and we can actually put guarantees around those.
That's amazing. That's awesome. So yeah, I think we're done with this amazing podcast today. Thank you so much for being here with us. This was such a great value addition. And yeah, thanks a lot for all your input. I think a lot of people are going to benefit from most of the answers here. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.